brothers and sisters of India. Today I'd like to discuss with you the topic of Prime Ministership. Kindly consider this as a sincere effort by an Indian citizen to safeguard and protect the honor and legacy of the Prime Minister of India. The Prime Minister's performance is often a measure by which we all judge the performance of our country. A Prime Minister who succeeds makes us feel that the nation can succeed. And it is also through him and his performance that we understand India's role in the world and India's hopes and aspirations for itself. The Prime Ministership today is not what it was when Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru became the first Prime Minister of India. It has constantly changed, though not always, expanding in power and influence. What makes Prime Ministers able to rise to the moment? What makes them successful as history judges them in retrospect? Being a successful Prime Minister means being a leader, but what exactly are the characteristics of leadership? Some suggest that the office of the Prime Minister is so staggeringly complicated that nobody can be a good Prime Minister. I disagree. It is clear that it is perhaps one of India's toughest jobs, but still it can be done. So how can it be done? One of the most important things that a Prime Minister has to have to be successful is clarity of vision. Effective Prime Ministers have a strategic vision and a direction in which they want to lead the country. They are concerned with big issues and big challenges and seek to explain their vision in a way that allows people to understand their circumstances and develop confidence in those proposals. One thinks of Abraham Lincoln with a house divided speech, saying very clearly his goal was to save the American Union while limiting the expansion of slavery. There has to be a clarity about the goal, if not always clarity about the method. For the clarity of vision doesn't necessarily always lend itself to a clarity of direction, which is the second great characteristic. Consistency of purpose, but a willingness to change strategy in moments of crisis. One again thinks of Lincoln. Lincoln's purpose remained the same while the strategies continued to be modified. The third thing is that in moments of crisis, Prime Ministers benefit for good or for ill from the legacies that have been left to them by the previous Prime Ministers. One of India's greatest Prime Minister, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, has left a tremendous legacy for those who follow him. What Atalji did in persisting with the Golden Quadrilateral program made it possible for India to commute better and develop a strong transportation system. Successful Prime Ministers are people with emotional intelligence, free of distracting emotional perturbations. They must have an internal self-confidence. A good Prime Minister doesn't wet his finger in the morning and put it in the air to see which way the wind is blowing, but has core values and confidence in self. Everybody gets nagged by self-doubt at some point, even great people. Even in moments of melancholy, Lincoln doubted the outcome of the enterprise in which he was involved, but he knew the importance of staying the course. For great people are not frozen by doubt and indecision, but are comfortable making decisions. The fifth characteristic of being a successful leader is a recognition that the responsibility of leadership causes a Prime Minister to have a healthy respect for public opinion, but not to be dictated to by opinion polls. A Prime Minister driven to accept only what has been validated by focus groups and polls is a Prime Ministership that doesn't believe in the ability of leadership to change public opinion. A Prime Minister focused on creating a legacy by adjusting what he does and says to what's acceptable to public opinion at that moment is a man who is focused on the wrong thing. History will make its own judgments. Long after a prime minister has departed, history will write a judgment about what the prime minister does. Successful people have always done right and damned the consequences. Successful people are also successful coalition builders. No leader can operate effectively by himself. A prime minister must build coalitions within his own party and between the parties. He must also rise above parties. That's not to say to triangulate against parties, but at times to put the interests of the country above the partisan interests of the parties. But the role of a party leader is vital for a prime minister. No prime minister can be a successful leader without being a party leader. A successful prime minister surrounds himself with a strong team and also organizes advisors to give him what he lacks: solid, straightforward advice. So, an effective leader is one who can allow people to give advice that may not be in agreement with his views and opinions, and yet to feel secure in the knowledge that they are serving him by doing so, creating this environment for rigorous give and take and minimizing leaks and the use of press to pay back other members of the staff who said something with which there are disagreements is a difficult thing for a leader to do, but a very vital thing. Finally, there must be a readiness to act and a comfort in deciding. However, none of these characteristics are enough for a prime minister to be successful. It is how the prime ministers apply their abilities in times of crisis that matters. Who could have thought that a guy who was a failed one-term congressman, a failed US Senate candidate, and a railroad lawyer would have had the capacity to rise as Lincoln did in times of crisis to do the greatness that he did? Great people are made not just by themselves and their upbringing, but also made by the times in which they live. In October of 1962, following the Cuban Missile Crisis, President Kennedy remarked to his aides, "I guess this is a week I earned my salary." In reality, every leader has to earn his salary every week, but some are thrust into moments of greatness and others are not. To each generation comes its allotted task, and no generation is to be excused for failure to perform its task. So, my friends, let us all perform our task and try to succeed in shaping up our country and in shaping up our future. Thank you, my fellow Indians.